Welcome back to the Cruise Elite podcast. In this episode, I talk with Karen about her journey with overcoming plantar fasciitis. Whether or not you're somebody that's currently dealing with plantar fasciitis or really any kind of pain limitation, Karen shares some gold in this episode that will help you achieve your goals. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Karen, what's happening? How are you?
I'm great. It's nice to talk to you in person.
Yes, finally.
Yeah.
We're here today to talk about your journey overcoming plantar fasciitis. And I'm excited to talk to you because I've been talking to you about this process that you've been going through for, is it about the last year?
Yeah. Well, more than a year, really. Since I started with you, I started with the Hip Mobility Challenge last March 2023.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So that's about when that's what was happening then. And it had been, painful that was 2023, like 3 years.
Oh, okay.
I think I had sort of lived with it and coped with it and dealt with it and was always looking for some way to fix it,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
And I think it just kept irritating it and,
Right. Right. Well, this is going to be cool for me. I'm just going to be cool for our listeners because success leaves clues. And, you've gone through this process and you've done such an awesome job. And now you're in a place where you're doing so much better. Plantar fasciitis is one of those things that I hear about a lot from people. And just in general, I hear a lot about people's complaints about foot issues. And they're really, really difficult to overcome. Mm-hmm. And honestly speaking, I don't think people are very successful with it for a number of different reasons. And so I wanted to talk to you because you have been successful with it. And I just think that you'll have some really great things to share. I want this to be your time. I just really want you to be able to talk, and we'll go through everything, how it went down from start to finish. And yeah, I'm excited. So the first thing, well, let's start with a little bit about you, actually. You're a martial arts instructor.
I am.
Yeah. Let's tell me a little bit about that.
Even a step before that, I've always been, just talking about feet in general, I've always been a barefoot person.
Oh, okay.
I did gymnastics in my entire childhood from 5 to, I think, 15, about when I retired and started coaching. So barefoot as a child, and then, chose a barefoot sport as an adult as well. So,
yeah.
I think I was always aware of my feet a lot and always had a little bit of foot pain and kind of never really, I think they put me in orthotics when I was 12 for probably that reason, exhaustion and in my feet, things like that. So I'd always kind of been aware of my feet, even when I was a kid. But I think also realizing now had a good raising, like that I'm all about the strengthening of the feet and understand that even more now, the mobility and strength as I age. And if, in terms of history, and I think what might have brought me to the pain was, now I understand the threat bucket.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that really made a lot of sense to me. And I think things came crashing down when COVID came crashing down, not because of COVID, but because of, the lifestyle change that happened so suddenly, going from being quite active, and doing, actually at that time, I was doing like not even so much the martial arts, but on my own, I was doing interval training, pretty intense 30-minute type, those businesses,
like a HIIT workout kind of.
Yeah, that kind of thing, right? 30 minutes of sort of boxing style HIIT workout. And I think at that time, I was able to maintain it, but then suddenly stopped and was teaching classes, sitting down. During COVID, we just went online. We kept going, but I literally went from, I think, probably well-threatened body to stopping.
Yeah.
and sitting and talking and just being online, and then really I think get irritated, and then jumping back into teaching and walking and standing and being on my feet on the mats and on the floors. I think that just irritated everything, and then had trouble figuring that out. And then, like I said, that's why I say 2020 to 2023 was that time where I was sort of back on my feet and trying to get things back again was painful.
Yeah,
And I
right.
think
And
that's where you
so,
came along.
yeah, I'm curious. So before you and I got connected, what
Mhm.
sorts of things were you doing to try to resolve the issue?
Not enough. I mean, I went right to various well, I went right to orthotics because that was something that I did when I was a kid. That
Right.
was what was recommended to me and what had been fairly successful for me. I would, a tight shoe with a big heel box so that I have really wide feet because I've always been in bare feet so much. So, finding a shoe that sort of stabilized everything and held
Hmm.
everything together, and kind of the opposite of what I ended up actually working in the end,
Yeah,
that
that's
the
so
less
funny.
movement and more cushion, as opposed to more movement and less cushion.
Yeah, because that's
Um,
typically what happens to people is the first step that they often take, and they'll get advice a lot of times too, is okay, well, get into a special supportive orthotic, get into a special supportive shoe, you know,
yeah,
do all these things that are
exactly what
supposed
I
to
was told.
support you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Stop the bare feet. Get in shoes, for your comfort, right? And I
right.
guess there is a level of comfort in that where
Yeah,
there's kind of, um, it sort of relieved the symptom but didn't solve the problem.
totally.
Maybe is the way to put it.
Totally. So
Yeah,
when you and
and I'm
I
on my feet 4 hours a night on the mats. So that
mhm.
was really hard, and I think aggravated and didn't help. And I did, a little bit of, working on my calves and kind of thinking, okay, what else in the chain? I was aware enough that there's something else in the chain that could be,
Mhm.
causing a problem. Okay, let's start working on my hips because I think the whole chain is the problem. And really that particular light bulb about the hips is what kind of led me to you, and
Yeah.
sort of looking at more, okay, I got to work on a little more flexibility in my hips, flexibility, quote, flexibility, not mobility, but flexibility in my hips was what I was thinking at the time.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
And
you
then
and
learning a little more about mobility, and then you came along, where it
yeah.
was, obviously my algorithm found you for that reason, right? You had the very, sometimes the internet's too smart for us.
Yeah.
You landed there in my Instagram with a dojo style, martial arts style of communication,
Yep.
so it clicked for us, and the fact that I was looking for something that, oh, okay, maybe I'll work on my hips, I'll get my kicks better, maybe it'll help my feet, it kind
Yeah.
of was a roundabout way, but it really did start with my feet, but it was the hip mobility that brought me there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you and I got connected as you got into our hip mobility challenge.
Yeah,
You eventually then became a member of our Strength and Mobility Dojo.
yeah.
And I guess one of the things that I'm wondering is when you first got connected with Alicia and I in our programs, like how did you even know that you could work on your resolving your plantar fasciitis issue with what we were offering, or did you know that?
I don't think I exactly knew it,
Hmm.
but like I said, I sort of suspected that the chain from the hip might help with my feet,
Right.
right? So the hip mobility challenge brought me in there, but as anybody who's done any of your challenges, like the free challenges, especially, you have, once you get into it, you realize there's so much more information. There's so much more to understand. There's so
Yeah.
much more to know. And when you start with the threat bucket, that just blew my mind and really appealed to me in that, yeah, that's what's going on. I am full
Right.
of threat
Yes.
right
Yes.
now.
But
My bucket is overflowing, and that's where it kind of started. And then,
right. But you were already pretty forward thinking in the sense that you had a foot issue but you were able to think outside the box and at least tell yourself, well, maybe if I, do this hip mobility challenge and work with other parts of my body, that's going to affect, my feet as well. So you were already thinking outside the box comparatively to a lot of people, and that's great.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean I wasn't at first doing, rolling on the ball,
Right.
trying to massage it out, trying to, figure it out, that way, and not being successful with that. So, you try enough things, you keep looking, I think is, I think I do have this sort of desire to kind of learn more and find out more. And, I think
Right.
a lot of your members that appeals to people, right? That
Yeah.
sort of, how help me understand it. And even now I have a lot of information and I might not even retain it all quite yet.
Yeah, of
But
course.
the
Yeah.
pursuit of that knowledge, it makes it motivating. And I think, we talk about the general health, I think was definitely an issue for me. And I think I was in pursuit of um, knowledge that would help motivate me. I'm
Right.
not a naturally motivated person. Again, sort of with my background, one of the, I think in gymnastics, I was always pushed from the outside to do things, and
Mm-hmm.
then pushed by the competition, pushed by the coach, push, and then as an adult I went looking for somebody to push me. Right.
Right. Right.
Hence karate appealed to me because there was somebody to tell me, okay, do this, keep doing this. And I think I had to learn that needs to come from me, and where do I find it? And I think the more knowledge I have, the more it comes from me instead of the outside.
That's
And that
great.
includes overall health. Like that's
Yeah.
learning to look after my own needs, needs being fueling properly, which is a big challenge, still a big challenge. Fueling in food, fueling in oxygen was a big
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, sleep, all the other things other than just, shelter and,
Right. Right.
you know.
So, okay. So as I think about, our experience together,
Mhm.
I think back to some early conversations that you and I had when you first got involved in our community and you started doing the strength dojo and the mobility dojo and you started doing the work. And I
Mhm.
remember talking about your plantar fasciitis and you were sharing some history with me on yourself and your symptoms and what was going on. And when we had those first initial conversations, I remember thinking to myself, she's probably got this. Like, just based on talking to you, I knew you probably were going to come out of this successful. But I remember saying to you what I say to most people when I get into these conversations is you have to be ready for the long game, and you have to accept that something like this might take you a year or more to get through.
Mhm.
And when I said that to you, I've had so many experiences with talking to different people that can be very overwhelming. That can be very discouraging because you're telling a person, hey, I know you've been searching for answers for the last 5 years before you met me. Now I'm taking you down a different path with a new process. And by the way, it could take a year or more. But I could sense that you were like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to know more about how you were feeling during this conversation. But I sort
Mhm.
of sensed that you were like, well, okay, I will accept that. And I'm just glad that someone can tell me what the process might look like.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to you and afterwards feeling like, you know what, if she can stay consistent and do the work, she's probably got this. And I could just tell right away that that was the case. And that's not always the case when I have those conversations with people. So can you kind of tell us what you were thinking at that moment, learning that it might take you a year or more
Mhm.
to get the results that you're after?
Um, I I loved how careful you were in telling me that. I could sense your, I hate to tell you this, but um and I appreciated it actually. I that feels like integrity to me. And that was early on in kind of knowing you guys too. So it was another sort of check of wow, these guys are legit.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
didn't need a quick answer. I didn't need a quick fix. That's not even what I was looking for. So when you sort of, you know, took the risk of saying, because it was a risk for you
Mm,
to say it's going to take this long, I appreciated that, right?
mm.
And thought, okay, this is good for me. So no, I mean, other, of course it's discouraging. Of course it's gonna, I needed, again, from an external thing, I needed somebody to tell me, okay, this is how long it's going to take. So I appreciated the long-term well, not that long, really. A year isn't that long in the big
Right.
picture.
Right.
But I
That's so true.
appreciated the awareness of that it's not going to happen in 6 weeks. It's not going to happen in 12 weeks. It's something you're going to have to work at and it's going to take time to work out. So all of that was good for me. I felt good about that. And
Yeah.
it motivated me actually, more than it discouraged me. I personally.
That's great because I feel like when you can help someone understand what the process might look like, that in itself is kind of validating. And I think that people just really struggle when they don't know what to expect at all. There's just more likelihood that they're
Right.
not going to be consistent and then eventually they're going to quit.
Right.
Now, there was another element to this conversation that I wanted to also touch on
Hmm.
because one of the things that I find just experientially with people that have plantar fasciitis is you kind of have two groups. You have the group of people that might be loading their body too much in a way that now it's becoming stressful. To give you an idea, in the past, having worked with lots of like trail runners and endurance athletes, when they get foot issues or plantar fasciitis, often that's related to the high volume that they're using with their training. And so
Hmm.
you kind of see that more in an athletic population. And then you got to start thinking about, well, how do we get the volume or the intensity down in certain areas and allow their body enough time to recover and still do all the healthful things that they're going to need to heal the issue. The
Hmm.
other group with plantar fasciitis is more the general population who is running into the issue based more on lifestyle habit issues. And I remember touching on that in the conversation with you and kind of explaining that and suggesting, again, trying to be careful, and suggesting that it's possible that somewhere in your life things changed and maybe you didn't know it or maybe you did, but that leads people to different a different way of living their lifestyle. And with plantar fasciitis, you often see that when people become more sedentary or they're just not doing the right forms of movement, or maybe they're having different metabolic struggles, their metabolic health is declining for some reason. I mean, we talk about the threat bucket constantly, and you could really insert any threat into the threat bucket: poor
Hmm.
sleep, poor nutrition, other health issues that may seem unrelated but aren't when you understand the threat bucket. All of these things matter. And I remember suggesting to you that we really needed to consider what your lifestyle was right now and potentially changing some of those habits, including carving out enough time for the right dose of the right movement, which is what you did with our programs. So when I had that conversation with you, that was another moment where I was like, I think she's got it, because you actually accepted the fact that it may have been more lifestyle than anything.
Hmm.
And you were describing how things had changed for you with COVID and you just weren't doing as much as you were doing activity wise. But can kind of talk about that, because I feel like you were able to make some really important changes for yourself that ultimately led you to where you are right now.
Hmm. The concept of all or nothing needed to, I think, change for me. It was more of a mindset shift too.
Mm.
in consistency of looking after myself, not just going to the gym or, the consistency of always looking after myself every day, my health every day,
Right.
whether that, and I'm still struggling with food. That's always the food type fuel and eating properly. And it, I can, the excuse of our lifestyle, teaching from 4 to 9 every night doesn't leave for a super good rhythm of when to eat and
Yeah, so
when
true.
not to eat, and coming home starving at 9 o'clock at night. And that, like, there's definitely an issue that I'm still working on. Um,
Right.
but well motivated to do so. I'm just in a whole different place, than I was a year ago in my mind, for sure. Because I can move better, because I have more energy, because all of that motivates the next thing, which motivates the next thing, and that it's a journey that never ends. We talked about that sort of consistency, that getting, like I said, getting away from all or nothing, and something
Yeah.
is moving forward, taking that step, going and doing that movement, or having a better rhythm in your food intake, whatever it is something. And
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's so
have to
true.
be, that I went to the gym and I did, 30 minutes of cardio and, pushed all the weight I could, that it doesn't have to be that every day. It just has to be every day.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
And
That's
ongoing, right? Not, it
yeah.
doesn't just end. And this feels like, oh, I've conquered plantar fasciitis. It doesn't feel like that to me. It just feels like, okay, that's great. That's more resolved now. What else do I got? What other things can I do to kind of keep healthy and keep moving and
That's how it is for
stay
me too.
mobile? That's, yeah.
That's exactly how it is for me too. I knock something out and I achieve it, and it's like, all right, well, that's great. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And you can use the same process with all these little things that you're trying to improve for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you had a lot of little victories along the way, and you it was great that it's great that you're able to understand that those little doses of caring for yourself and doing the little healthful things that we need to, whether it's 10 minutes of mobility work, or your entire strength dojo strength training session,
Mhm.
right? You just got to keep up the consistency. And let's talk about your training. So like what has it been like for you over the last year, almost year and a half? What have you been doing, and where do you think the most value for you has been in terms of the type of work that we've been doing together that's helped you with this issue?
Um, oh, that's all of it. So many things. Again, the bigger picture is consistency for me,
Mm-hmm.
and to not, get myself so overwhelmed. Or I was also really conscious of, I already am sore. I'm so sore all the time. Like, everything's stiff, my feet hurt. It does not motivate me to work. I
Mm-hmm.
do not want to go to the gym. I already feel sore. I don't want to go and work out and get sore. Right.
Right.
So this was me last year, and so I, like, begrudgingly pulled myself into this, going, okay, here we go. Now I find myself still some days, not all that motivated to go, but definitely have inside me, okay, I always feel better now when I go. So I think, learning to not over threaten myself, and start out easy. So mobility was the what I did at first. What, not even strength training yet, not
Mm-hmm.
even, I didn't jump too far too fast. And even when I got into the strength training, I where I knew I was capable of strength training, I had done it in the past. I think you sort of eased me into, what, let's just start with the fundamentals, let's just
Mm-hmm.
start with that basic stuff, and not feel too proud to go, okay, I gotta go bench,
Yeah. And that was
whatever.
our joint mobility, right?
That Yeah, we started with the joint mobility, and I did that for, I don't even know, I didn't keep that track of how many weeks I did it, but and that's all I did was the joint mobility. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually found pleasure in that. I was at I didn't have a gym, but I was at the dojo, but I didn't have any weights or anything. I just got myself some bands and was just work through and I started to move better. I was like, wow, I just started to feel better. And I mean, specifically with the sore feet in the morning, if we're talking plantar fasciitis, very specifically, to barely be able to stand up in the morning when you wake up. Um, I would go on and find Taylor's lower body mobility
Mm-hmm.
and that's what would get me moving in the morning. It would get me past that initial painful wake up morning, specifically in my feet. And then I thought, okay, well, if I can get past that, then I can, okay, maybe I can go do a little bit more. And then, okay, I'm going to start doing a little bit more strengthening. Hey, I'd really like to get some weights in there. And one thing led to the next. And then as the eventually with, I think, the encouragement of getting past that stiffness and pain first thing in the morning, I was able to do more and more. And then I kept consistent with it because it was pleasurable
Yeah.
instead of painful
That's and
that I was
that's
expecting and used to,
Yeah.
right?
And that's really hard too, to wake up in the morning and you wake up and you start going on with your day. You're ready to take on the day, but you have pain limiting you immediately. That sucks.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you sort of correlate, I felt so old, like I'm at the time 52 years old and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm shuffling around the house. I can't, I have trouble my bedroom's upstairs. So to go down the stairs, to take that first step down the stairs in the morning, almost dangerous, right? So even for my own personal safety, it was important to resolve. And I'm like, I can't, I got to do something. So,
Well, good for you,
um,
because you could have popped some Advil and powered through it, but you started realizing that you had to just turn to some of your high payoff mobility drills and get that practice in, and that
yeah.
that was magic.
I learned very quickly what worked for me, what was, like you say, a high payoff. There was a few nerve glides that I knew very quickly relieved that morning pain so that I could keep moving and get moving. But then it would come back. At first it would just come back.
Hmm.
And that's the part that took so long. So I could fairly quickly get out of that initial morning pain with the mobility and nerve things that I found work for me, nerve glides. And then just all of a sudden I'm like, hey, that's not happening anymore. I
Yeah.
can get up and walk in the morning. I'm walking down the stairs. Hey,
So one
so it eased itself out as I got more and more mobile, I guess.
it's interesting you said that. So one of the things that I think I sort of, over the years of helping people like you and sort of observing the ones who have been really successful in dealing with pain, one of the things that I think becomes really important is that the person, and I'll say that most of the people that I've watched become successful with overcoming pain issues, they seem to all have this in common. They seemed to be relatively structured individuals where they were on enough of a schedule during their day that once they carved out these areas in their life where they were going to do like their mobility work like you did, because they had enough consistency in their schedule and they were very grounded as a person in that way, they were able to understand what you just said, which is all of a sudden I noticed that something was better and I was able to do this thing with less pain and more ease.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge moment for a person. So, like, let's say you already have a walk scheduled in your day. You're going to do a 15-minute walk or something after lunch. And for 3 years, that walk is painful because you have a pain issue. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, you start doing your morning mobility. And then you
Mm-hmm.
notice a little later on down the road, you take that walk after lunch, and hey, the first half of that walk, I didn't have any pain.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you connect with that. And I think your big brain, your cortex, says to your crazy your crazy midbrain that is trying, where all of the impulsive behavior is coming from, and all of the sort of survival based behavior is coming from. Your big brain goes, "Hey, quiet down, quiet down. We had something happened here." something happened and it was positive and we're attaching to it. And all of a sudden that sort of creates a little bit more motivation for you.
Yes.
And you move forward, and now you're willing to maybe even take on a little bit more, and maybe you got to that point where you're like, you know what, this is going well, let me do this a little bit more frequently, or maybe let's progress to the strength training now that I've been
Hmm.
wanting to do. And I just feel like that loop continues where you take action, that action leads to a little bit of success, a result, and then
Hmm.
that gives you motivation, and then you
Definitely.
sort of are refed into the cycle, and that's huge. And it sounds like that's kind of how it was going for you.
Right. I mean, I think you talk about people who are insular, well aware of what's inside their body
Yeah.
and how their body's working. And I think, I mean, I don't know that I was always right about
Mm-hmm.
what I thought,
Mm-hmm.
was correct or not. But I think I think you do have to be aware and even aware of, I was expecting this pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to feel it. Wait a second. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Wait a second. No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
not. Yep. And now I'm doing the thing without pain that I've been doing, especially sort of a chronic pain, something that's lasted a long time. This anticipation of the pain, but awareness of, don't convince yourself it's still there either, just because you're so used to feeling it. This
Yeah.
letting it go. Oh, hey, wait a second. It's gone. Okay.
That's a huge part of
Right?
the mindset. Yeah, that's a big
Right.
part of the mindset shift, because yeah, you're used to the pain being there, and you have to be aware enough that something has changed. And if you don't pause for long enough to have that awareness and ask those really important questions like, how do I feel, and compare that to how you
Hmm.
felt before, it's really hard to understand if you're headed down the right road in the process.
Right.
And I feel like this is
I
where
guess
people
that's
get into trouble.
self-assessment too,
Yeah.
right? Where you're sort of your awareness of is the assessment working? And I
Yes.
think I get a bit lax on, when we first joined the strength dojo, this awareness of assess and then do the thing and then reassess. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I very quickly eased out of that with a more natural way of, okay, this is, oh wait, that didn't feel good. That's not right. A little
Yeah.
less structured in assess, reassess, but this is awareness of, okay, that worked for me, or no, wait a second, that wasn't working for me. You get better at it over
Yeah.
time, I think. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I always tell people when working with them, our first goal is one pain-free repetition. And it
Right.
doesn't sound like much, but one pain-free repetition can lead you to two pain-free reps, and then what you're ultimately doing is continuously proving to your brain of what is possible. And
Right.
that's actually one of the bigger reasons why I teach the assessment process that we use, is
Hmm.
because it engages you in the process instead of feeling like, okay, I'm going to do this routine and hopefully in 12 weeks I'm going to feel better. Instead of that, it's engaging you every moment to assess and reassess, to see how the exercises are helping you, to see how your
Right.
body's responding. And then it gives you so many repetitions of basically asking yourself, is this better, same, or worse?
Hmm.
And it engages you in a way that all of a sudden you feel empowered, like, oh, there's actually drills here that are going to help me versus drills that aren't going to help me, and I have to be in that process. And I feel like you, when you're doing that and then you find exercises that are helping you, you're constantly proving to your brain of what is possible. And
Hmm.
the more you impact your brain on what's possible and teach it that it can feel less pain, you're now starting to, in the long run, you're starting to see this effect take place where all of a
For
sudden,
sure.
yeah, all of a sudden you're starting to make the progress that you want to make. It's That's huge in the mindset.
A specific example of that for me was the knee circle. When you told me you have to go through a straight knee, the straight knee on
Oh,
that part
oh,
of the
like the
circle,
lockout.
the lockout,
Yeah,
right?
the
and
lockout.
and for me, well, even having been in gymnastics, we would lock out our knees,
Mm-hmm.
and then going into martial arts where you would never lock out your knees, right, for
Mm-hmm.
stability. Not the
Sure.
same thing, not the same thing.
Yeah.
So, but for you to say lock out my knee, I was like, oh, that is threatening to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do not want to lock out my knee. But I did it, and I slowly started, at first I was like, you're afraid of it because I'm aware of it, and then my that knee circle got clearer and better, and I am no longer afraid to do that. It sort of, I had to prove to my brain that my knee actually does this and it's okay. And,
Absolutely. People, there's a
yeah, I
lot of
love
people
the
that
idea
have,
of that bulletproofing, your
yeah,
joint like that.
a lot of people have that mental block around locking
Mhm.
out their knee.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think it's maybe, and for me too, like that, I had to go through the process of maybe misunderstanding that, you know, locking out your knees in a self-defense type situation is
Right.
not the right way to be.
Right.
You
Right.
need to be more stable with your knees. That's not the same thing. That's not what we're talking
Totally.
about. Sort of, you get these rules in your mind that, oh, you got to open your mind and go, wait a second, it's not about that. We're talking about the joint,
Yes.
differently. We're not trying to be stable here. And the idea that your knee can do these things, and the knee over the toe, and your body should do that, right?
Yeah. It's
The
true. Yeah.
human body does that, right?
It
And
does, yeah, and
should.
we're
Yeah.
building its options. We're building the
Yeah,
options and moving through full ranges of motion, and
for
building those
sure.
maps so that we have the most options possible when we need to move our body.
Yeah, I needed
Oh,
all those maps in my feet for sure.
yeah.
That I would say I have very flexible feet. I have, they sort of splay out when I step, right? So I think they have a tendency to, be easily irritated
Mhm.
in that
Mhm.
way. So the stronger they are, the more mobile they are, the more I found that, I went from orthotics to I love my barefoot shoes now. We could have a whole conversation about that. That's a different
Right.
podcast, but
Right. Right.
certainly I get it. But it's just my footwear has completely changed because of, I
Well,
think,
that's so
strength. I
important.
couldn't have done that without the what I did over the last year, for sure.
Yeah, that's so
You
you
can't
so
just jump into it.
right, right. So you
It
went through an
takes,
adaptation with that.
yes,
Yep. Yep.
for sure. Well, I had to, right? Like mostly because of the plantar fasciitis that I was trying to work out, and then realizing, wow, I'm actually more comfortable in bare feet. Why? The only thing that wasn't comfortable for me is, and I think as you age, you lose a bit of the padding on the bottoms of your feet.
Mhm.
So, a little bit of adaptation with some padding on the bottom of my feet, but not changing the structure of the shoe and the ability to move and the width and my desire to have those toes be able to move and
Yeah.
splay out when I walk, I think it's been life changing, really.
That's awesome. So the mobility work was where you found the most value, and you really carved out the time for that in your life. That eventually led you
Yes.
to strength training. How many
Yes.
times a week have you been strength training in this process?
Now three. I started out with two in
Hmm.
in the again. Let's just see if I can do two.
Yeah.
Let's just see if I can do it. And let's not overdo it and make sure that I can be consistent. And so I did start out with two, but then I was like, you know what? I think I can do three. And
Nice.
now I'm fairly consistently doing three, and also trying to make sure that I get that cardio stuff that we don't like so much
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't
in
like
there.
it.
But I know you don't, which also appealed to me because I'm like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But no, that's even that. But I think the strength training came first. That helped motivate me to go. That just sort of start moving more, and it helped me go. You know what? I could probably do that too. I can
Yeah.
add that.
Totally. That's great. That's
And it
great.
was one thing at a time, rather than trying to go, okay, I'm going to fix my body today and I'm going to do all these things that aren't sustainable. And I think I have done that in the past. And I think also, with age and time comes some wisdom
Yep.
and patience and different understanding when you've been in enough discomfort. I wouldn't say pain, I've never been, fully disabled, but certainly that these normal discomforts with aging and not accepting that that's how it should be,
Yeah.
really understanding that you need to keep moving in all ways, all joints, all the time.
Yeah. So true. So
And
true.
I know now what happens when you don't. It was a really good lesson at a really good, important time in my life, that kind of midlife where, the world made you stop. I guess it didn't make me, but I did stop.
Hmm.
And then realizing, hey, this is what happens when you stop.
Yeah. So
Right.
you've used the word consistency a lot, and so
Hmm.
obviously understanding that you had to be consistent in this process was a huge, part of your success.
Yes.
Are you human, or did you fall off the horse at all? Like, were there any setbacks? Did you,
Of
I
course
mean,
I fell off the horse.
yeah, like let's talk about
But
that. Like what?
accepting that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Accept, and I think that was a lot of it, this sort of acceptance of this is a never ending train, and I think, I don't know, probably you said that in there somewhere about, there is no falling off, there's no on, there's just
Mm,
life, right? And being okay with, something else got in the way today, and not beating yourself up about that, because there's tomorrow.
right.
And then just carrying on, and not, that rang true to me. I heard that in different ways. um and that's what consistency in the mindset of, it's okay, and just keep going, just keep going,
Just keep going. That's
just
so
keep going.
I'm so glad that you were able to hear that message through, some of our live calls and our
Definitely.
conversations together, because that's huge. Like you really just you have to commit to the long game, and if you make that commitment to yourself and you just accept that health and fitness is just something you're going to do. You're just going to keep going with it. Then you don't feel as bad when things get in the way, because something is always going to get in the way. No matter what, life is going to throw something at you and you're going to get off track for, 1 day or 10 days, however it goes down. And as long as you can understand that you've made the commitment to yourself for the long game,
Mhm.
it eases that sort of anxiety that can be there. And I
Yep.
feel like when you don't do that and you don't approach that properly, people just get that all or nothing mindset. And then they're like, well, I missed the last 10 days because of this vacation and then this stressful thing that happened. Why am I even doing this in the first place? I probably lost all my results anyway. And then they just
Hmm.
quit.
Hmm.
And if you just make that commitment to yourself and you know that this is something you're just going to do, at that
Hmm.
point, even after a week of, missed workouts or whatever, you're able to say, you know what, it's Monday. I'm going to start up where I, left off before. And you just seem to be able to get back on track so much easier.
For sure. And nothing is wasted.
Right.
Nothing is wasted, even that work you did. And I think I used to think that way too. Even that work you did that was so hard, and you were sore, and you got through it, and none of that was wasted. It carries on and it builds. And I think if you just have the confidence that you're, to pick it right back up again, you don't have to pick back up again of who you were yesterday or 10 years ago. Who you are today is important.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to be somebody you were before. You're just, okay, where am I today? What's good today?
Mm-hmm.
And what's something today? It's
Yeah.
certainly better than sitting on the couch.
So,
You know,
this is, as I'm starting to think
acceptance of
about,
where we are right now, I think, is
right,
important.
right.
Yeah.
As I'm starting to just kind of process everything you've said, I can't help but think how different your journey has been than the average person who gets a diagnosis and goes to their doctor, and maybe that leads them to their, 6-week prescription of physical therapy.
Mm.
I can't help but notice how differently you approached it. You knew you had this thing called plantar fasciitis, but you didn't get too isolated in your thinking, and you didn't get too attached to the diagnosis, and instead you started educating yourself and you started understanding that this journey was really going to be about improving your health and fitness very globally, not
Yes.
just this area of
100%.
pain that you were feeling on your foot.
Yes.
And you knew it was going to take more than 6 weeks. The average, physical therapy experience, a person's going in maybe once a week. So now, are we being consistent? If you're doing your exercises once a week, yeah, maybe you have some stuff to do at home, but the average
Mhm.
person doesn't do them because they're not bought into the process, because
Yeah.
there's no assessment process,
Yeah.
and they're not engaged in that way. So then they go to
Yeah.
PT the next week and it's like, hey, I forgot to do my homework, but I'm here now. I'm going to check this box off. The cycle continues, 6 weeks goes by, and now boom, you're on your own.
And the truth is, you have to do the work.
You have
It's
to
not
do
your
the work.
therapist that's going to do the work for you.
Yeah, that's right. You
You know,
can't put that responsibility on another person. And
that's right.
so I can't help but think how different your experience was than the cycle that people are forced into,
Hmm.
right? With just how things work. When something hurts, you go to the doctor, and then you're in this cycle. Really, over the years, having watched people be successful like you, they've all had the same things in common. They didn't take no for an answer. They decided to educate themselves, and they were able to make good decisions through that process. And I really
Hmm.
do believe that when you're able to overcome pain, it's not necessarily the exercises that become the most important thing. It's the groundedness of the person and their ability to make smart decisions along the way,
Hmm.
because you're going to find struggles, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have moments where it's not going the way that you want to. The pain comes back, you have a flare up, life gets in the way, you miss workouts, whatever happens. But if you're able to get back on the horse and continue to make those smart decisions, you give your body no choice but to continue to improve.
That's right.
And I feel like that's what I've witnessed with you.
It's
And
a journey of self-discovery,
it is.
really.
Yes.
And you do have to kind of enjoy it. You have, I don't know whether that's
Yeah.
a sick sense of enjoyment or just enjoy, you sort
Yeah.
of figuring stuff out. And it is thrilling when you're able to, accomplish something like that, where you can literally relieve your own pain from the work you're doing. How cool is that?
Yeah. That is
And
cool.
appreciate those wins and enjoy them. So it can literally be fun. Whereas when I started, it was like, oh, I don't want to do this. It hurts too much, and
Yes.
really fitness, going to the gym was always negative in my mind because it was always going to be painful or just uncomfortable or, but you do it because for whatever reason. But this time it was different. It was exciting to just feel it all get better.
Yeah.
As slow as it was, to the awareness of that, but it's exciting to accomplish things,
That
right?
is
And
exciting. And
motivating. Yeah.
you should be really excited. What I want to have you talk about for a moment before we kind of wrap up here.
Hmm.
Let's say, one of your friends came over to your house. You had only a few minutes to talk to them. They were dealing with plantar fasciitis, and, you're someone who's just gone through this year plus long journey of overcoming it. And this is a person who's now saying, oh, Karen, I'm struggling with the same thing that you used to struggle with. And, I went to my doctor. They're sending me to PT. They're at that stage. You only have a few minutes to talk to them. And now you're in a completely different place because you've overcome this thing. What do you tell that person? I want to know this so that our listeners can, just have a little bit of your
I'd say
wisdom.
go see Taylor. Call
It's nice
Cruz
of you.
Elite. Yeah. That's what I'd say. That's what worked for me.
That's nice of you.
Because it's true. Uh,
Well, a coach,
it's
you
hard. It's
can't,
too hard to
a
say
coach is
quick,
good,
if
right?
I'm honest. Yeah.
You got to
Yeah,
have a coach.
honestly,
That's
I needed
helpful.
the coach. I needed that. And I can you and Alicia are a big part of it. I think for me, even the platform itself, like it was motivating to me, and it was given in the way that worked well for me and my schedule and how I like to see things. I was a bit at first nervous about the social part of it. I was shy about it. I
Oh,
didn't really
interesting.
want to
Like the
put things
community and
out
stuff.
to the world at first in
Yeah,
the
that
community,
makes
right?
sense.
And so I was careful and, watching and didn't really want to share too much. And I think through the live calls and getting to know you better, and how you coached privately on, DMs and that kind of thing, how encouraging you were. And Alicia as well. I've had several conversations, text conversations with Alicia as well, that kind of helped me through these little things. So all of that, it wasn't all me. It was definitely you guys, and your platform and the live calls that happen sort of help you get to know you better. You're like, how are we supposed to know this guy on the internet?
I know. I worry about that too, because it's like
Yeah,
I'm
and
on
there's
the
sort
other
of,
end
who is
talking
this
to a
guy, right?
camera.
And I was careful, in that, just sort of watching and listening, and after some time became and realized how great your community has become, and that is very much because of you two, and how you put
Thank you.
things out there and encourage people, and everybody encourages each other. I'm so impressed by how much some of your members know, right,
Yeah,
already, how
isn't that
much you've
great?
taught them, right, and how much we teach each other, even when you two aren't involved. There's conversations happening, and it's really neat to talk to somebody from Germany about the same issue you're having. And the community itself is definitely part of it. And that was something that surprised me, and didn't really was a bit shy. I didn't really want to get too, well, clearly I'm not that shy, but but I was at first, just sort of careful.
Yeah.
So nobody has content like you. Like, there's so much there. There's everything you ever needed to know. And you just need to mine it out and find the stuff. And then even if you don't want to take the time to look at that stuff, the live calls just keep you up to date and keep you learning. I always learn something. And even hearing something I've heard again, I learn it in a different way. And I'll listen to a live call that I missed on a replay, while I'm at the gym. I got you in my ear, like you're my personal coach, right?
Nice.
So, and that's exactly what I needed. I didn't need a personal trainer to stand there over me, but I
Yeah.
just, I needed to discover things on my own. And sort of your platform allows that, with just the right amount of ability to touch base with you when things go wrong, or, personally, and to be able to specifically ask you a question, I think is invaluable, was certainly helpful for me. So that didn't answer your question. I'm sorry.
No, it did. That's fantastic. I mean, listen, if that's how the community has helped you with the support, I'm glad you said that, because I do think that support is so helpful in the process
Definitely.
of trying to achieve
Definitely.
any goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
support sort of outside of my personal world. I
Yeah.
can step out of it, which is partially why it feels safe too. I think it's nice to be able to just separate yourself, and be involved in this community of people that are super supportive, but they're not necessarily in your everyday lives either. I don't know. There's something neat about that. I
Yeah,
think
there
that
is.
it's motivating and fun, and yeah.
Awesome. So cool. Well, listen, let's close it right there. This was a great conversation. I'm so happy to talk to you and learn about how you've gone through this process. You've done such an awesome job, and who knows, maybe we'll do this again, because you'll have some other fantastic accomplishment that
Yeah,
that you've
for
that you've
sure. It's
earned
a
through your
work in
hard work.
progress. I'm certainly not done. There's no, it's not over. It's definitely just the journey, right? Just keeps going. You just keep going.
It's true. When it ends, it
Yep.
begins.
Yep.
No doubt about it. Awesome. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much
Thank you
for being
both.
here, Karen.
Yes, my pleasure.
All right, there it is. It's always a pleasure to hear directly from people who have done the work and accomplished their goals. If you want to learn more, then sign up for our Strength in Mobility Dojo. We're actually closing our doors in just a couple of weeks, so now is the time. If you're listening to this episode later on, you can still get on the wait list for our next enrollment. But right now, we're gearing up for a really cool experience that we're going to be running this summer, that's going to involve a live component where you get direct coaching from me, and we're going to be taking people through an educational process, as well as a very practical one that introduces people to our philosophy that uses applied neurology to help you problem solve your aches and your pains, as well as improve your overall health and fitness. I hope to see you on the inside.